Metros will be the vanguard of national export growth. Any growth in exports, doubling or not, will begin with our major metropolitan areas. Here's the real heart of the American economy. 100 metropolitan areas that, after decades of growth, take up only 12% of our land mass, but house 2/3 of our population and generate 75% of our GDP. These communities form a new economic geography, enveloping cities and suburbs, exurbs, and rural towns. Our report shows the extent to which these top 100 metros in the aggregate drive U.S. exports. In 2008, they produced an estimated 64% of U.S. exports, including 75% of service exports and 62% of manufactured goods that are sold abroad. Incredibly, the top 100 metros even produce 25% of America's agricultural exports and almost 1/3 of oil, gas, and mining exports. The top 100 metros dominate 7 of the 10 largest U.S. export sectors. This includes 68% of chemical exports, the top U.S. export to Brazil and India, 76% of computer and electronic goods exports, the top U.S. export to China, and 80% of business and professional service exports, the #1 U.S. service export to China. Now, here we're talking about goods and services produced within the top 100 metros, but these places also play another critical role in trade. They are the nation's logistical hubs, concentrating the movement of people and goods by air, rail, and sea. The metro economies, of course, do not exist in the aggregate. They have distinctive starting points, and they vary considerably in the export prowess and intensity. Our research digs deep to profile the export potential of each of the top 100 metros. Here's what we find. The nation's 4 largest exporting metros, New York, Chicago, LA, and Houston, are supersized performers, exporting more than $50 billion apiece in 2008. Other major metros, Dallas, San Francisco, Boston, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Seattle, are also global players, exporting more than $24 billion apiece that year. These 10 large metros generated 43% of the exports of the top 100 metros and 28% of all national exports in 2008. This is not just about the large metros. As we see here, a different group of smaller and medium-sized metros are dependent on exports in ways that larger metros are not. Exports contributed more than 15% of gross metropolitan product in these 10 U.S. metros. Now, the power of these places is the power of agglomeration and the power of networks. Let's take Wichita, for example. Wichita is the nation's most export-intense metropolis, with 28% of its metropolitan output coming from exports. Transportation equipment drives the lion's share of Wichita's exports, with more than 65% of that metro's exports coming from the sales of aircraft and aircraft parts. Jobs in the transportation sector pay well, more than $61,500 on average, significantly higher than the average national wage of $45,500 and change. In total, exports are responsible for 22% of total employment in that area and 71,000 jobs. The Wichita sector represents a well-tuned network of public, private, and nonprofit firms and institutions. Firms like Cessna and Hawker Beechcraft are global players in aviation, servicing demands in countries ranging from Germany, Japan, to the UK. These firms compete, but they also collaborate. They share a thick labor market of skilled workers and benefit from a wide range of supporting firms and institutions like parts suppliers, Cox Machine and Perfecta, the National Institute for Aviation Research, the Wichita Technology Corporation, and Wichita State University.